Get your mic on.
Everybody ready? Okay.
Put your mic on.
Well,
Put your mic on.
my demo today is putting people in landscapes and seascapes.
I put the thing.
Let's get the mic on.
Yeah.
You know, it was the painting that they were
All right,
holding
guys,
up.
he's starting. Jim's starting.
Well, today what I thought I would do is show you how to add some figures into your landscapes and seascapes. And in order to do that, a lot of people give up because they try it and they fail. And that's understandable. But if you keep a few simple rules in mind, I think you will find that the addition of people into your landscapes and seascapes will also add a lot of interest into the painting. Because anything live in a painting will draw people's attention, whether it be a person, a bird, or a pet or an animal. It draws your attention immediately because it's a live thing that you're looking at. So, what causes us to fail when we try and put people into a painting? I think that in most cases, it's a matter of bad proportions. Because we don't necessarily think of proportions when we're drawing or painting a person, but when we're viewing it, it'll look wrong, and the proportion is what's messing it up. So if we learn the rules of proportion, it makes it a lot easier to put live people into your work and be successful with it. One of the biggest problems, I've eliminated a problem right here. One of the biggest problems is people make the legs too short for some reason. We just automatically seem to do that. So when you put them in a boat, you've solved the problem. Another one is putting in too much detail and getting it wrong. What kind of detail is hands? If you put the hands in like this, it's hard to get the right proportion to this, to this, to this, to this. And you generally will fail. So what do is you don't do the hands. You just do kind of a shape that's hand-like. You don't do the feet. You make the feet go away like you do here, right? You don't see the feet. And when you have them in a seascape, you can also do things like just have them lit from one side and then shadow the other side. And rather than putting in shoes, you just make them part of the shadow. Okay? And they'll start fitting in just nice. And you can put hats on them, but just very simple hats. You don't do any eyes, you don't do any ears, you don't do the mouth. You don't put that in. So you have less to critique. The more detailed a painting is, the more it's open itself to critiquing. And the more criticism it can arrive from that. So when you keep it simple, you eliminate criticism. Okay? But it's still extremely important to get the proportions. I don't know if everybody can see this okay, but proportions go like this. If you make your figure 10 increments tall, the head will be 1 increment, or 1/10 of the total height. And then the legs should be 40% of the height, or 4 increments. The rest of the body from the crotch on up is 60%. So remember those proportions. 10% for the head, 40 for the legs, that's to the crotch, where the legs would start, and then 60% of the rest of the height for the body.
Including the head?
No, 60% from here to the crotch, 40% from the crotch to the ground. If you stick with that, you're within normal human dimensions. And then, the length of the arm, these are too long. Where they should fall would be about the crotch, or the 60% down would be the end of the hand. Like right here. That's how long the arms are. The elbow is about half of the arm, right? Plus the extension of the hand. So you get those proportions regardless of where you're doing the Michelangelo, you know. Those are proportions. And if you stick with that, I think you will be successful. It takes practice. And when it comes to people's clothes, it's infinite color. You look around the room, what colors do you see? You see red, you see blue, you see white, you see orange, and so on. So the clothes can be any color. You can do a wet and wet, so that you get multiple colors within a shirt, you know. I don't think I have a good example of that. Here's a good example of a lot of color. Again, 60-40. So you can get bright colors. You can do skirts, shorts, long pants. One thing that is very difficult to do, and unless you have a really good reference, I advise you to stay away from it, and then that's a figure running. It's so hard to get that balanced right, because they're running forward, they're a little bit out of balance already, because the motion is, the next step is going to be balance the body, you know, the figure. So it's very hard to do figures running. I tried it here. Bad reference. Reference is up here. And it's not good enough. So be sure if you're going to do a running figure that you have a good reference to go from, so that you get the balance that you want. A lot of figure painting can be done with the background, where you do the negative painting, and that's what this represents. The negative painting is kind of backlighting the subject matter by leaving a little bit of white all the way around, so you're actually backlighting the person, and it's a negative painting too. People going off into space, of course, the further away they get, you know, the higher they're in perspective, the higher their feet are going to be, and the lower the head's going to be. So you can get them in perspective. Although I didn't do any perspective vanishing lines or anything like that, I just did something that looked like right in perspective, what I thought was right. And that makes for interest in the depth. of the work. So if you can do that, you'll find, and these are all just playing with stuff. I had no purpose in mind for them as far as putting them into a painting, but just trying to get the feel of proportion. And Carol Crumline right there has done a very excellent job of figuring out skin colors. And I don't even begin to know what she knows about that, but she's gone through from what would be a light Caucasian, Asian, Hispanic, all the way to, you know, the Negro, the black, and so forth. And you can go all the way through that skin color spectrum with a handful of colors, just by the proportions you're using. Now I used a light red, a warm red, and a warm yellow. Gamboge is a good one for skin color, adding red to it. Mostly though I use medium yellow, cadmium yellow, medium, which is a warm yellow, along with a red, which would be a warm red, favoring the orange side, not the purple side. And then as you get darker, you can go with a darker red that favors a little bit of the purple, and browns, add your browns in until you get down to what would be burnt umber and ultramarine blue. And that'll give you a very dark gray, either warm or cool, depending on how you want to proportion it between the blue and the brown. So those are the skin colors, which are all over the map. But you see, I haven't put any hands in there. None of these. There's no eyes, no nose, and no feet. The feet are really just part of the shadow. So those are the general guidelines that I want you to look at and practice doing it. And when you get practiced to where you feel comfortable, then you can do and add these people into a painting. Well, these are backlit, so I have a shadow on the, what would be the left side of their bodies. I have a highlight running down the right side of their bodies. And it's hard to see from back there, I know, but there's no facial features either. And to me, it works. And it's called Wash Day in Tarpon Springs. And they've got their rags hanging up on the wash line there. And they're standing there chatting about their day's catch or whatever. And to me, it's the story. And without those people, it would be a very weak story to tell. So with a little bit of extra, it has a nice story. Okay? Yes?
Yes, hi. I brought in a painting, but I brought it in too late. It's got like about 14 little characters in it, and I would like you to criticize it if you can. It's got all little figures in it. I have it right here.
You brought it in to have it critiqued?
Well, I brought it in for the month, you know, the beginning of the month.
Yeah.
But I got in too late, so I
Okay.
just have it right here. And it's got all characters in it, so just like exactly what you're talking about.
I don't understand what
Why
you're
don't you
asking.
critique it?
Yeah. Use it as a sample.
Oh, yeah, we
The
could, sure.
demonstration's got a lot of little characters. When he's done.
We can do that. Brings up a point I wanted to make. Critiquing is not an easy thing to do, but it should be for me. I've been painting for a long time. I've had many critiques of my work done. I've seen many other critiques done of work. And I did a very terrible job on the first critique we had here a couple months ago. Yes, I did. I tell you what was wrong, and I'll tell you by example. I submitted this to Florida Watercolor Society for a critique. And it was a slide I sent in, and it was projected on a wall 8 by 10 feet. And the critiquer, who is a well-known artist from California, pointed out that one side of my lighthouse wasn't right. It was crooked. And when it got up to 8 by 10 feet, it was crooked. You could see it. But this is the size of the real painting. And actually, it's a little smaller than this. Interesting. I went back and I measured. I got the line right. I said, oh, gee, I missed the line. I had it sketched in there, but I missed it. A little over 1/64 of an inch. 1/64 of an inch. You know what that is? Takes 2/64 to make a 32nd. Takes 4/64 to make a 1/16 of an inch. Okay? That was, I think that was a little bit anal, to say the least. And I since have straightened it out, and then I made a reproduction of it so that you can't see that mistake in this painting. So, that's not critique. That's criticism. Critique is not a criticism process. Critique is a supporting process. A supporting process to help you understand where you are, why you're there, where you want to go, and ways to help you get there. That would be a great critique, okay? If you can answer all those questions in a critique, you've done the job. I didn't do it the first time, but we've had an opportunity to do it since today, and I've gotten better, okay? So please, if you want to critique, feel free to come in, and I'd be happy to do it. Okay, enough about critique. And I could sit here and do these people for you, but I don't know if it would really help you any more than what I've already told you and shown you. Because it is so important to practice these things, so when you go to do the real thing, you're very comfortable with it. Yes, Carol?
I like what you've done. I like how you've grouped the people. I like how you've measured for the height. And can I add a little bit about doing people? There's a measurement for the weight in order to show when you're drawing your person, this bone right here should be directly in the middle between the feet, if to have the weight distributed. If the person's leaning on one leg, the weight on one leg and hardly any weight on the other leg, this bone will be more above the weight, the one leg with the weight.
Can you show us what bone? Is it right here?
Yeah. Clavicle? What is that?
Clavicle, collarbone.
The middle of the collarbone, clavicle bone. Okay. Clavicle. So as you're walking and you're trying to catch somebody in motion, this stays in the middle, and as you move the person where the weight is, this should be the middle of the clavicle is directly over, and actually officially it goes to the inside of the ankle bone. The inside of the ankle bone.
Here, Carol, I should have that foot further forward.
The inside ankle will be directly below the clavicle, unless he's halfway, unless his weight is halfway. If it's where he's not moving, but if he's moving and his weight is on that front foot, the clavicle and the inside ankle would be directly lined up.
These right here.
Yeah.
Right.
Right.
So I'm a little far.
It's not the neck, it's below the neck a little bit, right at the.
Right.
So as you move, when you're drawing in a drawing class and you're drawing the people walking, and you've got many sketches of the same motion, you're trying to catch a vertical line for the inside ankle. That bone is in with the,
Okay, great. Great information.
Wow.
Makes it a lot easier than finding a reference. Yeah, good. Yeah. Any other questions? Yes, Jim?
What about a row of people who are disappearing? In other words, you have large people over here and there's small people in the distance. How do you make certain that you have
The right proportion, the
the
right height?
right proportion?
Well,
perspective.
then we're getting into what you would call perspective, if you want to get accurate about it.
Yeah.
You have a vanishing line. Landscapes and seascapes all have vanishing lines. What is that? That's where the earth and the sky come together. In the case of an ocean painting or a Gulf painting, it's pretty easy to see a horizon line. Okay? That's this one right here. And the vanishing point on the horizon line will give you proportions in depth. So if we have a horizon line there, and I have a person here that's, well, let's just do it by scale to make him 10 inches tall. There's 10, 1, and 40. Where's 40? 40. 1, 2, 3, 4. That's what I thought. So there it is. 40%, 100%, and then 0 and 10. So this is 10, 1/10, 40%, 60%. I'm sorry, it should be 60%, and 100%. So that's the person's height. And then right here is the leg height. And about in here is the waist, shoulders, arm, cool, right? We know we're right, pretty close on that because we measured it with a ruler. So it can't be that far off. Now I can make them fat or skinny or old or young or whatever, but then I got the proportions right. So let's go off in perspective. I'll start at the top of the head and I'll go to a point on the horizon. I'll start at the base of the legs. Oh, I'm going to get in front of it here just to get a line. Cool. Guess what? I can make a person any height and any distance from here. How do I do it? Straight line down. There's my next guy. Right? And then 40%. Legs. Chest height. Arms. Oop. So now I've got my next person in here. Leg height. Arms. But maybe they're not standing in a straight line. Maybe they're standing offset. Well, that's not a big deal either. I could take make that same person, same height, move them over. Does that make sense to everybody? It's also parallel perspective. That's the easier one to do. Parallels where all of the depth lines are running parallel to the horizon line. So you can just make parallel lines and move that person anywhere over here, over there, and that height and that distance. Is that fun? It is fun. It really is. And it's simple as heck. I mean, it doesn't get any simpler than that. Yes, Carol?
You might want to show them, you have the horizon line is low
Yes.
at the waist,
Yes.
as if someone is sitting in a chair, because that's eye level. You might want to show them if it's the height of the man's eyes, bring it up
Oh.
a little bit higher, as if you're standing in the crowd.
You mean somebody sitting
Bring up the
in the
horizon
same
line.
proportion, in the same scene?
Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
okay.
Because the vanishing line, that horizon line is eye level,
It's eye level.
Right.
so it would be someone sitting down, seeing everybody's waist at their eye level.
Okay.
And if you raised it to be in your scene, you wanted it to be a little higher, it would be the viewer's eye level.
Okay, yeah, the viewer's eye level is not necessarily the seated eye level of a person you're painting.
Right, right.
I mean, I could have a person.
No, not even the,
all of
not
it
even the
would be-
horizon,
It would
but I
be
mean
pretty
on this
close.
one.
When you think about eye level here and me standing, it's about my belt line, right? Which is just about where the horizon line is in this drawing. So if I were to put a seated person in, I could easily do that and make it this tall. Okay, I'm getting it there, but see what Carol's saying, that this is eye level.
Yeah.
And a seated person would be about that size.
So you're trying to get if you were to stand that person up, it'd be the same size as the one that's standing up there?
Yes,
Yeah.
pretty much, yes.
Okay.
And I might have a little foreshortened here, maybe the leg should be longer. And body a little forward. This person would be. Okay. Perspective is so fun. I started in college learning how to do it, and they did a lousy job of teaching us. So I bought books on it, and I studied the books and studied the books. I made my own perspective grids and put my displays in there, put my buildings in there. I put my products in this perspective grid, and it's as complicated or simple as you want to make it. Like anything, it can be extremely simple. It helps to understand the complexity first, but you don't have to. As an artist, you just have to keep in mind a horizon line, vanishing point, some rule of measure, and then projection of your vanishing lines. So, yes.
On that person standing up,
Yeah.
raising his arm, what kind of perspective do you have from, I don't know, what's the length of that? What perspective do you have for that?
I know everybody in the room has seen Michelangelo's,
Yeah.
all right? Now, that's what he did the drawing about. It's all about proportion and placement in space of the arms going up. And you can do it the same way, because you know that the arm is supposed to be this long, from the bottom of the tip of the fingers to the joint. So there is an arm length. And about in here is the elbow. So if you swing it around, and I would swing it more from this point. Yeah. Hand out here. If I did a decent job, the radius is there. So that gives you an idea of how you would do it. Yes.
What about the size of the head? I know it's going to be an inch. You know,
Oh, yeah, the head. A lot of times,
how wide or whatever.
well, 1/10, but it's important with the head that you make it more of an egg shape than a round shape. Because if you do a round head, some people are kind of round with their heads, but most people have an egg shape. And then the top of the head does not include the hair.
Oh,
Okay, you have to add hair onto that. And whatever the hairdo is. And we're getting into Jim's territory now, but
Well, that's why I brought it up, because he said my painting, I got my portion right on this kid's head. And I didn't even think about that when I was painting it. But he said that I had the portion right. It's like, okay.
yeah, okay. Yeah.
But I wondered what the balance was
You
to
know,
the shoulders.
I've seen different disciplines use different proportions. If you're doing a fashion drawing, the heads are like not 1/10. They're like
It's 7.5.
Yeah.
About 7.5.
the head proportion. I'm thinking rather than 1/10, it's more like 1/12. They're much smaller in proportion to the body, right?
I always thought the head was, well, anyway, there's your,
The legs are long.
Yeah, and I've heard 8,
yeah.
1/8 for head height.